stories you know so well. Time, oh time, please won't you say the stories of yesterday right now. Time, oh time, oh time, oh time. Time, oh time. Time, oh time, please won't you tell all the stories you know so voices crying in the wilderness. Come at you, come at you. Voices crying in the wilderness. Come at you, my people. Voices crying in the wilderness. Voices crying in the wilderness. Hey, we are the Lord. Everybody the people down. Everybody will be exalted. And the crooked will be made straight. That day. Time, oh time, please won't you tell me all the stories you know so well. Time, oh time, please won't you say the stories of yesterday right now. Time, oh time, oh time, oh time. Time, oh time. Time, oh time, please won't you
I got a secret that I'd like you to understand. See the book there in the angel's hand. Book of Daniel has got a message for you, a message for you. The angel cries as a lion begins to roar, secrets untold, mysteries in life to store. What's the thunder? Who knows? Won't you understand? Understand, the book is sealed. The angel stands on earth and the sea. Don't it make you cry? All that we can see the cloud understand. Understand. 7 thunders, all the earth a voice. Now you know. You've got to make a choice. Will you listen to the mystery of life, the mystery of life? Oh. See the angel with a book in his hand, the book of Daniel. It contains the eternal plan, 7 thunders. Won't you see? Won't you listen to me? We've got the key. In the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, Babylon's gonna fall, gonna come to the ground. Mystery finishes, he has declared to his servants the prophets. Won't you beware? Won't you beware? Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another live session, and today I'm going to be covering the visions of Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel because they parallel to a bit of history that I want to cover here, talking about the kingdoms of the world and how the same empire basically follows the same pattern as it comes to us through the ages. So before I begin, I just want to outline a couple things here. I'm going to be covering 2 passages here, and the first one is going to be Nebuchadnezzar's dream, which is in the 2nd chapter of Daniel, and then Daniel's vision, which is in the 7th chapter of Daniel. And I'm going to show how these 2 are basically describing the same things in different symbolism. And we're going to get right into it here, actually. I'm not going to waste time. Let's get the verses on the screen, and we're going to start from chapter 2. So, if you don't know the story, well, you know what? Let's just read straight from the text, because, you know, I like to do it that way. All right. Yeah, that's working. Okay. So, it starts off, and in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep broke from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac. Now it's interesting that pretty much all of the Hebrew scriptures are written in Hebrew, except for starting right here in the middle of this verse, verse 4, it starts off in Aramaic and it continues for a couple chapters afterwards. So Aramaic is not my strong point, so I don't really know a lot about the details of the actual language here, but I do know the translation and I do use a concordance, so from there, if anything stands out, I'm going to point it out. And then we're going to go into the parallel of how this ties in with the whole system. But just a bit of disclaimer here, because I'm really well versed in Hebrew and can understand it, but Aramaic is a bit of a different story for me. Anyway, continuing on. O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream, with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that you would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. But if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation thereof. Because guess what? Anybody can say, yeah, this symbolism means this, and this is kind of what that means, and let's go with that meaning here and that meaning there. Anybody can really say that. So the king was actually testing them, like how much insight do you have into the unseen realm? Because, talk is cheap. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requires, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. So the king was on to them, and he's like, you guys aren't really insightful. You can't really tap into this unseen realm and reveal the mysteries. So how can I trust your interpretation anyway? I could make my own interpretation if that's the case. So, yeah. All of the wise men were to be put to death because the king had lost faith in this whole system. And he's like, this is all just a farce. So, yeah, I'm going to eliminate this kind of school. So they went to round up everybody, and Daniel was included in that. Daniel, of course, was one of the Hebrew boys that were exiled into Babylon, and who was trained in the arts of, the secret things, the languages, the astrology, all that kind of stuff. And Daniel was among one of the most wise. It actually says at the end of chapter 1, in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. But anyway, verse 14 says, then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. So Daniel says, you know what? Leave it up to me. I'm going to go in. I'm going to talk to the king and make sure that, let's just buy a bit of time, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Because Daniel was tapped into Source, and Source knows all things, as we will see here. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known unto Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O... Hold on, sorry guys, I didn't follow on here. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desired of you. For you have now made known unto us the king's matter. A few things I want to actually point out in his prayer here, or in his thanksgiving. It's not a supplication, but it's a thanksgiving. So he says, it's Elohim, and of course this is Aramaic, but it's parallel. It's Elohim who has all wisdom and might. And this is what I want to point out here. Elohim is the one that changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. So even though we think like, here's the trend and people are voting and all this kind of stuff fits into the physical arena, ultimately the physical arena is just a manifestation of the cause of all of that unfolding in time-space. And this is where the real cause is. All that kings are set up, and this goes for politicians, this goes for leaders, all of that is included in this cycle of, all things made manifest from the causal source. Knowledge, he gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. So all this insight and understanding and knowledge come from this same realm, this same domain of creator source. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. Because when the light enters a place, there is no darkness. Everything is manifest, everything is revealed, and everything is shown for what it is. So, continuing on with the story, verse 24. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Yehudah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought, the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? And here's the point, because Daniel didn't take any credit for himself. Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret of which the king has demanded, the secret which the king has demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets, and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed are these. As for you, O king, your thoughts came into your mind upon your bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that reveals secrets made known to you what shall come to pass. So the king was wondering, what's going to come after this? I'm the king, this is my empire. Babylon was like a great kingdom, literally a city-state empire that started already assimilated the Assyrians, was already pushing already into Egypt and all these different realms, annexing them as not just satrapies, might be not quite an accurate word, but just vassal states. I don't think that's the right word, but just subordinate and paying tribute to the Babylonian Empire. He was wondering what's going to happen to all of this system afterwards, after I'm gone, afterwards, because we all know nothing's forever anyway. And he continues, this is the king's thoughts, but as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that you might know the thoughts of your heart. So all of this was made known so that the king would understand, that Daniel could understand and have insight to what really happened, and then the interpretation is reliable. So now we're going to get into the into the actual dream. I'm sorry if I don't scroll because I'm looking at two places at once, and when I get to reading, I just kind of forget about the scriptures on the screen. But I'm going to do my best to follow on screen here. So we have the king's dream, and this is what he saw. Do I have the image here? You know what? I'm going to put that up later. So we're just going to read here, and I'm going to elaborate a bit. You, O king, saw, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. You saw till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. So that was the vision. He sees this huge statue of metal, mostly metal, but different stages of metal, from the head to the torso to the trunk, and then the legs, and then the feet, interestingly, are mixed with iron and clay. Iron mixed with clay, which means that, it's not pure metal anymore. And we'll get to that as we get through the interpretation here. And then, of course, after after he saw the statue, he saw this rock, this stone that was cut out without hands, and it smote the image upon the feet and brake them, and the whole image was turned to dust. And then it was blown away, so that there was nothing left of them, and that stone became a huge mountain that filled the whole earth. Now we're going to get to the interpretation. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings. Daniel is saying this to Nebuchadnezzar to describe him among the other nations. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. And of course, gold is like the highest form of metal. Even in alchemy, when you're going through all the stages from lead to gold, gold is the most valuable, and it's at the highest frequency, if you will. But then, after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. So these are the kingdoms going down through the ages. And Daniel doesn't list them by name, but we can see that the Babylonians were taken over by the Persians, and then the Persians were taken over by the Greeks with Alexander's army. And of course, after that, we have the fourth kingdom, which shall be as strong as iron. For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, the kingdom shall be divided, and there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. So this strength of iron is, of course, the fourth kingdom. But then, after that, it loses that strength and it mingles with clay. Well, what does the clay mean? Like I said, we're going to get to that in a bit here. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Okay, that's a curious statement. What does that mean exactly? But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Interesting, because all of these kingdoms are metal. And what happens as the kingdoms progress? Well, they get less and less valuable, but more and more strong. So the gold, of course, pure gold, you can literally bend it with your teeth. Just bite into it and you leave a tooth mark into it. But then you go to silver, and silver is, still brittle. It tarnishes and all this. It has different aspects to it. But we can see that as he's moving down through the kingdoms, all of this stuff moves towards a lesser and lesser value. The value is lost. And instead of value, strength it's swapped, value for strength. And we see that, of course, the Babylonian head is the head of the kingdom. And I talk about this, otherwise I'll talk about this much more in depth into the future. I really want to dig deep into this whole topic of the Empire of Babylon and how it still survives to our present day, because that same empire is coming through this transmutation, if you will, into certain other metals that have different qualities but are still the same institution. And of course, going back to the arms, the breast and the arms of silver, it's talking about the Medes and the Persians, because the Persians came in with what's the word I'm looking for? It was kind of like an alliance between the Median kings and the Persian kings, and that's talking about like the two hands. And that was set up in the Achaemenid Empire. That's the Cyrus, Darius, and all those kings, Xerxes, all of that kind of dynasty. And then that was defeated by the Greeks with Alexander. And of course that represents the belly and thighs of brass. Now I do want to just do something here. Nachash is the word for brass. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, perfect. And that also refers to it can also refer to the bronze weapons. The word Nachash actually also refers to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, but we're not going to get into that in this expose. We're talking about the transmutation of metals, and as it goes down to the strongest metal, which is iron. And as it says here, I'm just trying to... For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. So all the previous metals, all the previous empires, the Iron Empire just smashes to pieces. And of course we know who that is. But continuing on, we're talking about the iron then mixing in with the clay. And we have the feet that are part iron and part clay. And of course the feet contain the toes, which are 10 toes. Now, this is talking about 10 kingdoms, but ultimately it says that the iron is trying to mix with the clay. So we have a metal that's trying to mix with clay. And interestingly enough, he says that this kingdom, in verse 43, it says, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Now, the word for men, let's try and bring this up here. Is that working? Yes, it's working. Okay. So we have the same kingdom that's coming through the ages, mixing with the seed of men. Now, man also is called Adam, and Adam is taken from the earth. The Adam, or mankind, is represented by the clay. So what is the metal? It says they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. So who is this they? Obviously, they're not men. And we're talking about the same kind of empire, the leaders of the empire. So is Daniel saying that you are the head of gold, and over time, your legacy, your offspring, will be transmuted from a highly valuable metal to a lowerly valuable metal, to finally just mingle with the seed of men. Is he insinuating that the seed of this empire, of this kingship, is not actually human? I'll let you decide that for yourself. But we continue on, and I'm just going to expose more of what the text is saying. You know, I don't want to give my opinions here. I'm just looking at the text and just diving into like what it's actually saying and how it applies. No speculations in this episode. We have enough of that in other episodes. But finally, all of this kingdoms, it ends in this kind of compromise, and then the final compromise when their seed isn't even pure anymore. And then verse 45, for as much as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So this is basically the interpretation. It's talking about how the whole world is basically run by this whole kind of empire. And the empire, originally at least, is not human. And at the end, it will compromise so much so that it mixes with humanity into their bloodlines and creates this kind of brittleness where iron doesn't mix with clay. And even though iron is strong, clay is, it's nothing compared to metal. But this is the meaning of this dream. And we have Nebuchadnezzar here in verse 46, who fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is, that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing you could reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. And the gate doesn't just mean the door. The gate literally means the place where, all the judges, all the scholars would sit and discuss and decide things for society. It was literally like the courts. In Babylon you have the Ishtar gate and all the other gates in the city. Sorry, I don't have that photo, but I'm not closing Firefox, guys. Anyway, yeah, so that's what the gate represents, and this is what this system represents, this vision. But now we're going to get into the second vision, which is Daniel's own vision, which has different symbolism, but we'll see that it's talking about the exact same thing. Before I do that, though, I do want to point out that at the end, this stone that's not cut with human hands comes and crushes the last of the last and basically sets up its kingdom over the entire world. And this parallels to Revelation 20. In Revelation 20, we see that we'll get to that in another episode, but that's basically talking about the Messianic age and the 1,000-year millennial reign. But it's also talking about the first advent of Christ, because, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we tie these two visions together. So, let's go to chapter 7. And we have Daniel's vision of the four beasts. As we will see, these beasts are not normal beasts, at least for the most part. And they represent the same thing that we just talked about, the 4 stages of metal, and a little bit more detail into the last 10 toes. So, starting to read at verse 1. Hold on. Sorry, this live stream program has been acting up. I had to restart my computer twice, so I'm just making sure everything is okay. Everything looks good. Okay, let's carry on. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now the symbolism here, of course, you have the 4 winds talking about the fourfold nature of physical reality, which is also embodied, in the 4 elements, the 4 seasons, so on and so forth, the cycle of 4. And of course, the 4 great beasts come out of the sea, which the sea is waters, and the waters, of course, also represent the peoples. And these 4 beasts are diverse one from another. They're very different from each other. So we're going to get into the details of these beasts. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So this first beast, this will parallel to the head of gold, and I'm going to get to that shortly once I get through the text here. But it's like a lion with eagle's wings, and then the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So it's this transformation from a beast to a man. So it looks like, it's moving up, for lack of a better term, in the scale of awareness and understanding. It's given that a soul of man, a heart of man, and that's the first beast. Then we go to the second beast, like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. So, I'm just going to check up here. Yeah, we are good. Sorry, this thing has been acting up. But anyway, I'm just going to continue here. And after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. I'm just going to go into detail after. I'm just going to keep reading. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So here we are talking about the iron again, the iron teeth, and this is the fourth stage. But right there we have 10 horns, which also parallel to the 10 toes. And Daniel says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. So, this is a little bit of background before we jump into the subject of the 7 seals, because the first seal is actually more of this horn, and we're going to get into that once we start covering the 7 seals. But we can see how these 10 have out of the 10 another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And out of those 3 horns that are plucked up by the roots, then this other horn comes up. In this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So this is basically like a man that's, like really charismatic with his words. This is again the first seal, and we're going to get into that much in depth when we talk about the first seal. But I just want to cover this a bit here before I continue. Because all of this ties in together, and it's very intricately tied. Even the vision in chapter 8, if there's time, I might also cover the vision of chapter 8. But for now, let's just talk about this. I'm just going to read. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Okay, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till that beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And again, this of course ties in with that stone that turned into the mountain that covered the entire earth. But then it goes on that, he didn't know what he was looking at. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. This is still in his vision, by the way. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. That's us, guys. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. Wait a minute, what? We're prevailed against by this horn? Check it out, though. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. What is the world divided into right now? All the earth is divided into nations. And who's responsible for this nation setup where the whole earth is divided into these little nations? All the flags of the earth are based on the same kind of system of heraldry. All the governments of the world are literally based on the same kind of system. For the most part, they're either one or the other. Either, you have authoritarian system, or you have democratic system. I won't get into that in this episode, but you have these same kind of systems that come from the same source. There's nothing outside of that. There's no kind of humanity kind of ruling itself as sovereign beings. It's all subject to authority. And this authority is ultimately this fourth beast, which rules in a different way than the previous kingdoms. And we're going to see that as I describe a bit more here. This is the one that breaks in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. He's going to set up his own times and his own laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and a times, and the dividing of time. Sorry, I'm not following along here. Okay, a time and a times and a dividing of time basically mean 3.5 times. And that's very, very symbolic. Like the book of Daniel talks about so much. This might actually take 2 episodes, but I really want to dive into the first part of Revelation, which is the 7 seals. But we'll see. We'll see. We still have a bit of time today, so we'll see what I can cover today. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. And so that is basically the summary of it. But let's see how these parallel together. We have, in the system, we have the head of gold. And the head of gold corresponds to, you know what, let me just try to get this in the frame here. Let's just try this. There we go. Okay. Can I make it bigger? No. That's not good. Okay. There we go. Actually, that doesn't fit. Okay, there. That's good. Okay. So here we have the head of gold, which is basically Babylon. And then here we have the lion with the eagle's wings. And all of these are coming out of the sea, as you can see. And this is Babylon, 605 to 539 BC. And that's talking about Nebuchadnezzar and his empire. Then from there we have the silver, and that parallels to the Medes and Persians, the 2 arms of the Achaemenid Empire. And here we have the bear. Now the bear has 3 ribs in his mouth, and in his mouth he has Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Lydia is basically like Asia Minor in Turkey. Now, when that fell in 331 to Alexander, we have the four heads of the leopard, and this is of course the brass. Leopard is Alexander. The four heads are his four generals, and those four generals, of course, when he died, they split the kingdom up between themselves. So you had the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, and I forget the other two, but yeah, he had four generals, and from there we basically have these warring kingdoms that basically kind of fell apart amongst themselves before the Roman Empire came on the scene. And of course, Rome is the fourth kingdom in the statue as well as in Daniel's vision. Now, this beast has 10 horns. It has teeth of iron and just crushes everything, stamps out everything. It says devours the whole earth and treads it down and breaks it into pieces. These are the provinces of Rome and the Roman Empire. But we'll see that continues to this day. And this parallel that happened from the time of Daniel to the time of Christ also repeats itself in a bigger fractal from the time of Daniel to our time today. Now, this kingdom, which are the legs of Rome, ultimately have two branches, as did the torso have two branches. The Eastern and the Western Roman Empire, or Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church. Everything that comes under the Vatican is set up under this Roman Empire, which it never went away at the fall of the Roman Empire. They just changed their costumes and set up the Vatican, and they continue to rule from there to this day. And they set up the whole world, actually not so much as nations, but as dioceses. And these dioceses are their own territory, and this is how they divide and conquer the whole world. Now, this has 10 horns. This beast has 10 horns, and that refers to the 10 toes, which are 10 kingdoms that basically remained after Rome fell. These 10 kingdoms are, and I have them here, let's see if I can list them. We have the Visigoths, the Huns, the Franks, the Sueves, the Saxons, the Burgundians, the Lombards, and the three that were plucked out are the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, and the Heruli. These three kings were taken by Justinian of Constantinople, whose decree made Bishop of Rome the supreme head of the churches. And this was the beginning of the papacy in 538, because that set up the whole empire of papal Rome. Before that, it was pagan Rome, and then it became pagan Rome. Now, these two are parallel, and they're talking basically about the same thing. That at the end of this system, it's going to mingle its seed with the seed of man and basically make the ultimate compromise that causes their own downfall. And when the stone that no man carved out hits this empire, it will literally wipe it out into dust. And this dust won't, it says that there won't be any place found for it in the earth. Meaning that all of this stuff that's left over of these empires, there shall not be any place left for it. It won't even be able to survive in this world. And from there, that stone which struck the statue, it says that in that day, in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. This is verse 44 here. But it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So it's talking about this basically revamping of society, to put it lightly. But it's literally like the old empire, the old system that has literally run the whole world, divided the whole world up into nations, and to put people against people, it's not going to be able to survive. in the light of the new system, which is also to be noted that it's a stone. It's a stone, and it's that same earth. It's not metal, which metal is extracted and purified from earth, but it's earth itself. And it's not like clay, it's a stone, it's a rock, and this rock turns into a mountain. So the mountain then is unmovable, but it also covers the entire earth. And I do want to summarize this with the last bit here, talking from Revelation, the apocalypse. We could start at verse 4. And we see here that, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. And that's talking about this same kingdom that comes in this absolute, it's absolute majesty. Let's check this out, actually. Because it says, this is the second advent here. Hold on. I'm going to make sure I got the right text. And I saw heaven open, verse 11. And behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he does judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And that same Word of God is the Logos. That's the Logos that's talked about in John. And that Logos is, Christ made flesh. That pre-incarnate Christ, pre-incarnate Word, incarnate in Christ, but this is the actual Word of God here. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. See, wrath is not discipline. Wrath is something that if you do something in the absolute, if you turn and run in the other direction from source and the system of government, that cycle of justice, if you, if you just defy justice, then you have wrath. But if you make mistakes, that's different, and then you get discipline, and you have like a basically steering you back in the right direction. But winepress of wrath, that's talking about there's no holding back. You basically ran the other way, and you basically insulted everything that's good in source. Well, guess what? You've got your justice coming to you, and it's not going to be that pretty. So this is the one it's talking about. On his thigh, a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and on his vesture. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeds out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. And this is paralleled in the oracles of Zechariah. It's basically also in the oracles of Ezekiel, where this final war is basically delineated in detail. But we notice, going back a bit, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he does judge and make war. Now this is going to segue right into the first seal, and we're going to get to that. But let's just make note. Oh, sorry, knocking stuff over here. Let's just make note of what the points are that actually identify this rider in Revelation 19 on the white horse. Now this rider comes out of heaven. It's talking about the King of Kings, which is literally the title of Jesus. And Jesus has a sword and fights for his own armies who carry no weapons. That sword is also the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And it also says that his name is the Word of God. And then it says that he's wearing many crowns. Many crowns. His name is the Word of God. And the saints follow this this horse. All of them on white horses and clothed in fine linen, white and clean. We can also back up a bit, and it says the marriage of the Lamb, talking about, the saints. The saints are embodied in that type of being a bride. And it says, to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white. For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. Excuse me. So this is a white horse. A white horse. But we also see here in Revelation 6, the first seal, and this is going to segue to next week's episode. It says, behold, a white horse. This is upon opening the first seal. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now this rider on a white horse comes out of the seals that only the Lamb can open, because the Lamb opens the seals. Nobody else is even worthy to open the seals. This guy has no title of his own. He has no name. The first one had a name that only he knew, but on his robe and on his thigh it says King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This guy has no title. He has a bow with no arrows. That word bow we're going to really dive deep into next week. But his followers fight for him. He just goes forth once, and all the other horsemen, the second seal, third seal, fourth seal, they all follow behind him. His crown is a single crown, and this is basically a counterfeit of the final white horse. This is basically more of a, how to say, it's the beginning of the destruction. And we're going to see that. We're going to see that in next week's episode when we really get into the seven seals. We're going to start with the seven seals, but there's just so much more that I wanted to cover, even in the book of Daniel, because the timing of what we're dealing with in our present day and how this empire has morphed and changed its mode, because the first three kingdoms, like we saw in Daniel 7, they were all doing things according to brute force and armies. But this fourth beast, which is, the iron of Rome, it's running things in a different way. It's doing intelligence warfare. And all of that stuff that we're dealing with in our present day is basically summarized by the same force. A covert system of infiltrating the minds of humanity to make them docile and subject to your rule and your system. Now, I really would love to go on. I really would love to go on. And the timing of all of this it's also mentioned in the book of Daniel. And actually, you know what? I am just going to cover that here in a bit, because the ending of the book of Daniel shows us that it's in our generation to understand this kind of stuff. It's in our generation for us to actually break the seals. You know, it's not us breaking the seals personally as egos, but when we allow the living logos as Christ to enter into us and to act through us, that lamb is able to loose the seals, and the seals open the book. And from that we can actually see the book, because in Daniel, here's the key right here. I said that in the song I opened with. The book is sealed. This is the angel talking to Daniel on his instruction on what to do with his visions and how to deal with them and how to deal with the world that he's living in, and why Daniel's having these visions, even though they might not apply to his specific lifespan. It says, "But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." You know, it's basically like talking about us with this information. It's like all the information in the world has just skyrocketed and taken this exponential curve, just accelerated like we couldn't even imagine. Like even a couple years ago, you know, I'm looking back at 2012 and how much I learned in 2012 in my awakening. All of that stuff was still hidden, and it's kind of like the veil over all of that knowledge has been pulled back. You know, not in the physical. They're still trying to scramble and keep things hidden and manipulate information and all that kind of stuff. But in the causal realm, this veil has been pulled back, and literally, if you have eyes to search this stuff out, you can very easily find things that were hidden for even centuries, even millennia. You know, ancient secrets are just coming to the surface, and all of a sudden this deeper understanding, for those of us that are digging it out, it's evident. But, you know, there's still people that are indoctrinated by, you know, churchianity. And I'm not talking churchianity. I'm exposing the fact that churchianity literally is the Antichrist that stands in the place of Christ and says that, you know, this is the way it is. But they're sitting in the seat of Moses, as Jesus said. They don't let others enter in, but they don't even enter in themselves. This book is sealed. And this whole, you know, he says, how long? Verse 6. The man in linen says, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up in his right hand and his left unto heaven, and swear by him that lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. There again, we have the 3.5 times, the 3.5 years. And you know what? This also corresponds with the 70, Daniel's 70 weeks. Because that is how you break the time. What time are we living in? You know, I'm just gonna cover that actually, really quick, because if you don't know what I'm talking about with 70 weeks, you'll totally miss it. Sorry. Here's the 70 weeks. 70 weeks are determined unto your people and upon your holy city, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. That's 62 is 62. Plus 7 is 69. So we're talking, these are the stages, and we're going to get to it because in verse 26, it says after 62 weeks, so that's at the 69th week, after the 7 and then 62, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, or 7. And of course, the 7 also refers to years. This is what it's talking about. For 1 week, which is 7 years. And in the midst of the week, 3.5, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now this is talking about the 7 years, 7 times 7, and then we have 7 times 7 until the next 62, which line up to the advent of Christ. 3.5 years, which was his ministry, and he's cut off at the end of those 3.5 years. And at the end of the second 3.5 years is the stoning of Stephen, and that's literally when the transference was finalized from the nation of Israel, which had literally totally bought into rabbinical tradition, which literally comes out of the Babylonian Talmud. And man, I'm going to get into that in the future. But all of that was cut off at the end of that 70th 7. And we were living in a gap of time when time wasn't counted, but time began to be counted again when Israel was restored as a nation. And from there, we've lived up until now. We've fulfilled another 70, and that is what we're talking about, the end of days. So Daniel heard all of this, and he said, he understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Talking about the seals, 7 layers to this text. You start with the literal, but you don't end with the literal, because there's 7 layers of understanding. And once you get all those 7 layers, then you actually enter into the next parts of Revelation. And this revelation, it's what things must shortly come to pass. 2,000 years is not short, meaning it's happening all the time inside of us. It's that plan of all things. So yes, it's also historical. Yes, it's also literal. Yes, it's also allegorical. Yes, it's also metaphorical and causative. But once we understand it in its fullness, then we can actually grasp it inside of us and manifest it out through us, and actually bring this unsealing and understanding of the whole into our own transcendent beings, because our egos cannot understand. That's why it says no man was worthy to open the seals anywhere. It's the Lamb that opens the seals. But these words are closed up and sealed till the end of time. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. We are purified through the fire of cleansing, the refiner's fire. And it's not very easy, but the more we're purified, the more we're refined, the more we're made white. And it's this, right now, it's like the pressure's on, with society. And those of us that have woken up, we've woken up because we're, we kind of started, for me it was back in 2012. It was easy to wake up. It was easy to kind of see through these things and make it work, but I was still had to dig. Now it's like the veil has been pulled back, and it's like if you don't wake up now, like you've just totally bought into, the opium of the media. But like it says, the wicked shall do wickedly. And it doesn't mean like, oh, you're evil, you're out there killing people and maiming people and doing all this crazy stuff. It's just that those that have twisted their own minds, wicked, wicker, wicked, that literally means a twisting of what's good is bad and what's bad is good. Those that have twisted their own perception shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. And then it sums up a bit here more of the 70th week. Verse 12 gives a few numbers. verse 11 and 12. See, you have 1,290, and then you have 1,335. Um, those are also key in interpreting that 77s. I won't get into that in this episode because I could probably go on for another 2 hours, and it's already been over an hour. So we're going to end with this because it says, the angel says to Daniel, "But go you your way till the end be, for you shall rest." So he's saying to Daniel, you're not going to end up seeing all of this stuff because it's not even going to be in your lifetime. But you shall stand in your lot at the end of the days. And that's also talking about in Revelation, the second resurrection. And you know what? There's just so much here that I really, like, I'm just going to do piece by piece and as Source guides me to talk about, because, like, otherwise I'd just be jumping here and there, and like literally, guys, I can make these live streams like 2-3 hours long. But it is getting late, and you know what? I've just been so busy that I really am. I had to fit this in today because I have a whole lot going on, and it's not been difficult, but it's just been a little bit of a sacrifice to fit in these live sessions on top of the reasoning. And I still haven't finished editing the Joel Fernandez show for Sunday. Hopefully I can get that done tonight, and it should be, if exporting times go well, up on Sunday evening. I'm trying to put it up at 5 o'clock. Like 5 o'clock is my deadline for the lives. Like this one was like what, 6:37. But yeah, I'm trying to do it for 5 o'clock right now it's Mountain Daylight Time. 5 o'clock, and Joel Fernandez show, trying to premiere that at 5. But I do my best. I'm a one-man show, and really I really feel like, this information is to be shared because it's not about me. It's all about you guys. You guys are the reason why I'm doing all of this, because someone, even if it's just one person that gets something out of this, it's worth it. It's totally worth it. So before I close, I just want to decree blessings over all of you guys. All of you are valuable to what is happening in the world right now. All of you are absolutely critical, and each of you have your own part to play. There is nothing outside of that actually means anything. There's nothing that means anything more than you doing what you've come here to do. And society has basically like run us out of who we've come here to be by like asphyxiating all the aspirations out of our souls. It's tough to tap into that inner conviction, that inner passion, but we all can, and we're all here for a reason right now, no matter what is going on in the world, no matter what the media is saying is going on in the world, because a lot of it, I'm just going to say straight up, it's a narrative. It's a narrative, and whoever controls the headlines controls the minds of the masses, but you're not the masses. I know the people that watch this channel, we're truth seekers. We're aware that, the empire that has morphed over time and changed their inquisition from, racks and pulleys and spikes, all that kind of stuff, burning at the stake, dislocating joints, all of that stuff, it's morphed, and now it's all in the mind. They're dislocating the thoughts and the dreams that we have. And all of that's happening, we can't allow it to control our lives, because inside of us is this fire, and we just have to kindle that fire a bit more, because each of us are individual soldiers of this army that are rising up in this time, that are literally reclaiming this world for truth, for light, for love, for harmony, for absolute communion with not only each other, but with nature. As an ecosystem, we can function as a macrocosm. That's what we're here to be. We're not here to be lied to. We're not here to be indoctrinated, controlled, manipulated, coerced. None of that stuff. We are sovereign beings. And it's only by default that this institution has institutionalized their papal bulls, laid claim to us, and declared us incompetents lost at sea, that they can actually lay claim to anything that we have, our property, our souls, the land, real estate, all of that stuff they lay claim to because nobody's challenging them. But we challenge them right now. We take up our scepters and our crowns, not in the physical world, but in the causal world. And from that cause, from that intention, we rise up and we say no more. We are the sovereigns. We are in charge of our own destiny. We're not complying to whatever, agenda you have for us. Whatever indoctrination, whatever curriculum you've trained us to, we have a real teacher inside of us, and that teacher leads us into all truth. So I just decree that over you right now. I say blessings, because blessings, if you break that down, is be less. We are to be more. We are to be more than conquerors. And that is who we are, absolute victors, because we're fighting the good fight. And the good fight is the fight that's already been won. It's already been won at the cross, the resurrection. We're seated at the second heaven, in the third heaven, We're seated in the third heaven at the second highest seat in the whole universe, at the right hand of Source Creator, Father God. I covered this in my last episode because that was the groundwork that we have to have before we dive into, all these visions. Because if we don't know that about ourselves, we're going to see all these beasts and all these seals and trumpets and bowls of wrath. And we're going to wonder, we're helpless. We're going to think destruction is coming to the world. And that's where most of churchianity is. They're not waiting for the second coming. They're not waiting for the advent of Christ. They're waiting for the advent of Antichrist. And that's why they're so messed up. So not you guys, because we are aware of who we are in Christ, awake and sealed with the seal of God, not with the mark of the beast. And that will be covered as we dive into the 7 seals and more in the book of Revelation. So I'm going to close with a blast of the shofar. And we are sovereign beings. We are awake. We are here. We're not going anywhere. The empire better be running scared, because this is the sound of our victory. We're declaring victory because we know the battle's already been won. Shalom, my friends. Shalom.